this is counterintuitive because, of course, here I typed test as the expected input and in the exact same way gave it in the input. Still, it's false that Java tells us, hey, these two things are not equal. Hello everyone and welcome to the Self-Taught Software Engineer. Today we're going to check out what the difference is in the Java programming language between the .equals method and the equals operator. This one is specifically interesting to you if you have a background in another programming language such as Python, for instance, since over there the double equals operator works quite differently. I prepared a simple example program for you to see the difference. This just does one simple thing. So we're gonna have a string right here that simply contains the word test in all uppercase letters. That is our expected input. And then we're gonna get the input from the user, which I'm gonna type in a second. And we put both of these into variables. And then we do a simple thing, which is that we print out to the screen if both what is given here and what I typed is equal. The first time around, we're going to use the double equals operator, as you probably know it or maybe know from other languages. And the second time around, we use this a bit more clunkier looking .equals method. And we're going to see what is the difference. Let's run this right now. And as you can see right here, I'm going to type test in the exact same way as you can see it in the expected input. And if I execute this, you'll see quite counterintuitively the following behavior. For the first time around, so for the double equals operator, it printed false, which is quite peculiar since if you have a background in Python, for instance, or maybe also if you would imagine how this works in mathematics, this is counterintuitive because, of course, here I typed test as the expected input and in the exact same way gave it in the input. Still, it's false that Java tells us, hey, these two things are not equal. Why is that? The answer is actually quite simple, but requires a bit of explanation quickly. So what this operator is doing is not comparing if things are equal in terms of their contents. Instead, what it is doing is that it's checking if the two objects on either side, so in both cases, a string in our case, if they are referring to the exact same object. So what happens under the hood is simply the following. If we have a variable right here with the expected input and get from the user what they typed into a second variable, as you can see here, they refer to two different objects. Of course, we could do something like this, and then of course, this would refer to the same as this as we just assign it. But if we do it like this, what happens in the background is memory allocation. So what Java is doing is, of course, that to be able to use this program, the Java runtime allocates a bit of memory for what I typed here into the program, the string test. And then once we gave the input, it allocates another bit of memory for, well, the user input. At the end, we have two string objects. And that's precisely the reason why this gives us false. So the thing here to understand is that, and I think this is a good way to remember it, this operator, in essence, compares if two objects refer to the same location in memory. And of course, this is a good reason where you can, I guess, intuitively say, giving it here like this and getting something from the user is stored in two different locations in your memory once the program runs. Therefore, this is actually not equal. So let's write it down quickly. This compares if both objects refer to same memory location. A quick way to see that this is actually the case is if we, instead of comparing the expected to the user input, we just compare we say expected input equals expected input. If we do that and run our program again, you will see that this time for the first output here, it prints true. Since of course, I guess quite obviously, the expected input is indeed referring to the exact same object as expected input. I mean, this is a very obvious case. Therefore, this is true. Now, there are rare occasions where you would want to use this in Java. Generally though, if you want to compare two objects in terms of equality in the sense of the word, meaning it's the same content, so both refer to the same word in case of a string, this one is not the one to use. In general, you then want to use the dot equals method. So let's check that out. Let's go back to what we had right here. And as you can see, the second one is true. So this is the more intuitive way of what we expected what happens. And the reason simply is the following, which is that the contract, we also say, of the equals method in Java means that it compares the objects on either side in terms of their contents. So it compares, is the one object equal to the other one? Of course, in strings, this simply means, does it contain the exact same letters in the same order, in the same case and everything? Which of course is the case right here. We have the exact same letters both times, therefore they are equal. So what this is doing, it's comparing the contents of both objects. One thing to keep in mind right here is that if you compare other types than strings, this always works a bit differently, right? So if in doubt, the only chance you have is to hover over the method right here, or if you're in a different editor, click on it to see the documentation of this, and it will always mention how exactly it works. So in this case, you can actually see the result is true if and only if the argument is not null and is a string object that represents the same sequence of characters, which is precisely what I just explained, of course, being the same letters and everything. So the thing to note here is that if you compare different types of objects, so not something that's not a string, this might work a bit differently. In general, though, the dot equals method is always meant to compare two things in terms of their contents. Right. There, however, are with strings two exemptions to this, two caveats, which I figured I should also quickly show you. The first one is that it does make a difference if you create your string like this, which is like this direct syntax, which you know it from pretty much any program language, or if you create it as you would create any other object. So of course the other way to do it is like this. And if we get rid of all of this stuff right here and instead go back to our example we saw earlier quickly, which just compares if expected input is equal, and we put this right here, then you will see a peculiar difference. So if I do it like this, and you might already expect what's going to happen, we're still going to run it quickly, it prints false. The reason, of course, being that if I create a new object with the new keyword in Java, it always refers to two different objects. This one allocates a bit of memory with the word test, while this one does the same. In essence, what happens under the hood is the same as we saw earlier with the user input. The one time we have our one object, and the second time we have another object. And of course, they do not refer to the same object, even though we use this, since now you know what it actually does is checking if it's the same exact object, which is not the case. And the way you can always see this if the new keyword is used, because the whole point, as the keyword implies, is to create a new object, meaning that the second time around we use it, it creates a new one as well. Just to quickly show you that I'm not lying right here, if we would use the equals method right here, it would again print what we expect, that test and test are equal. Now, the caveat here is that if I do it like this, which is arguably the better way to create a string, or not only arguably, it's definitely the better way to create a string. So with this direct syntax, with the double quotes, and I right here use the double equals operator like this. Make a guess for yourself right now. What do you think would happen? Maybe you can pause the video even if you want to and give it a quick think. It is, however, very counterintuitive. So let me show you what happens. If I do this, you saw the terminal flashed. I can also run it again if you want to. It prints true, which seems a bit different, weird. So if we think about that, this very likely creates a new string, and this as well. Arguably, this should evaluate to false, since, well, this is its own object and this is its own object, even though, again, contents are the same. So why does this print true? So there's one thing to note here, this very specific to how Java works, and this is an important fact to keep in mind. So if you create a string like this with the double equals sign, what happens is that Java tries to be a bit clever. So what it's doing is that it can see that your string is already constant when you compile the program to run it. So what this means is that since you cannot change the string later on. Of course, you can, like here, I don't know, append something. But what this is doing is just create a new string that is test and the thing appended, meaning that this part, this string, is what we call immutable, so it won't change during runtime. So Java tries to be a bit clever and do some optimization right here to essentially save you a bit of memory. So simply what it's doing is that if you have a string like this in your program, so you don't take it from the user or you get it from some API or from somewhere else, but you have it like this, hard-coded, you could say, in your program, it's clever or optimizes the following thing by seeing like, hey, this and this refers to the same object. So what I'm going to do the second time around that the user needs the string, I'm just going to reuse the object I already had in memory after creating this first one to save some memory. So what happens right here is that if we do this, it creates a new object with this content, a new string. But the second time around, the runtime reaches this. It sees, hey, I already had in memory, had an object in memory, a string with exactly this content. So I'm just going to reuse it. The term that this is called is interning. This is of course quite a big detail, but maybe you might need it one day. So this refers to interning, that in memory this string and that string are the same as we say intern, such that this actually evaluates to the same object since they are in memory the same object. This works, by the way, the same if you would put this in a variable. So if I say here a, and then with this one I say b, here becomes even more apparent, because now you would think, okay, these are two variables, but even if I run this, it will still evaluate to true. Yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about the dot equals and the equals equals operator in Java. So quickly summarizing, if you want to compare two objects in terms of their contents, which you want to probably do in 99% of the cases, you have to use the dot equals method, since that's the only one that's going to give you predictable results. Of course, for strings, there's this one exemption which we saw right here, the interning. However, I can recommend not to rely on that in any way, because of course using dot equals right here will give you the same result while being a lot less error prone. So if you do not want to really compare if two objects refer to the exact same object in memory, then do not use the double equals operator, but instead use dot equals method. That's it. If you have any questions about this or something was unclear, please leave a comment down below. And apart from that, if you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And I see you in the next one. Tschüss!